This is StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi, and we're looking at what's happening in Sri Lanka currently, and some kind of a rift over the East Container Terminal. I'm joined from Colombo live by Asanga Abeyagoonasekera. He's a geopolitical analyst and strategic advisor. Asanga, thanks so much for your time. I do know, we approached you very late in the day, so appreciate it.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you all.
Well, also, our editor-in-chief, Nitin Gokhale, is in Bengaluru for the Aero India show, but I spoke to him earlier and asked him to explain why the East Container Terminal is such a contentious issue.
So, Amitabh, the East Container Terminal has been a contentious issue for some time. In fact, even before the current government came to power in Sri Lanka. Remember the Memorandum of Understanding between Sri Lanka, India, and Japan was signed in 2019, early 2019, when the previous government was in power. And of course, it looked a win-win situation where the two countries, India and Japan, will invest in the modernization of the Sri Lankan Ports Authority, or at least the East Container Terminal of the Colombo Port, which would have meant faster transshipment of Indian goods. Remember, 80%, nearly 80% of the transshipment at the East Container Terminal happens to be Indian goods, either incoming or outgoing. And therefore, it seemed a good proposition for India to invest. Even when President Gotabaya Rajapaksa was elected in November 2019, he and later his brother, the current Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, assured the Indian leadership at the highest level, at the Prime Minister's level, in fact, and then the External Affairs Minister and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval's level, that this will go through. Accordingly, they asked India to identify a private player who could invest money in the East Container Terminal's modernization. Adani ports were chosen, or were requested to go and discuss the terms. The discussions were on, but in the meantime, the Rajapaksa brothers ran into fierce opposition from the trade unions at the container port, the East Container Terminal, in fact. And they said that we cannot allow this strategic asset to be given in the hands of, even if partially, in the hands of a foreign entity. That's where the problems began, and it went downhill from then.
Asanga, I'll go back to some of the questions that I asked Nitin earlier also. Why has it gone downhill? I mean, we've seen high-level meetings between the External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, who traveled to Colombo as well. Why do you think things have changed as of now?
Well, the first visit, like as you said, of Foreign Minister Jaishankar for this year was to Sri Lanka. And during the successful bilateral talks between the President and many were discussed. So container terminal was, of course, one area where Indian projects was discussed. I think everything triggered after the visit. And so it was very unfortunate that the trade unions all of a sudden came to the forefront and basically was saying about referring to the 2019 MOC as not legitimate, as a document that was signed, was questioned, and about the sovereignty was discussed, and geopolitics was taken up by the trade unions. So for the first time, you see geopolitics being spoken by trade union leaders. Here, you need to sort of, I think, assess the larger picture here, which is really important, the larger geopolitical picture of the region, as well as what's going on in Sri Lanka, especially the Chinese footprint, the expansion of the infrastructure footprint, as well as, as you know, the CICT, the Chinese operated port, is right next to the ECT port. But there are several factors in it. One is that Sri Lanka has been sort of unfortunately drifting away from very important agreements such as the Millennium Challenge Cooperation Grant (MCC), which was frozen. Then followed by the SOFA Status of Force Agreement, which was there. Then the Japanese LRT, the light rail train project, and then the ECT. So I see a trend that's happening when you sort of connect most of these infrastructure projects are coming from of a Western liberal, so from the from that sphere. So there is a sort of a significant danger also coming in, especially into the nation's foreign policy.
Right. I just hold that thought because I want to get a little bit more into why you see it as a trend. I'm taking some of the comments and questions that are coming from our viewers as well. And Matara says Sri Lanka seems to be going to be the next colony of China. But let me, since you were talking about the trends in Sri Lanka, let me also go back to what I'd spoken to Nitin Gokhale about why the timing in terms of was there any change post the external affairs minister's visit there and the trade unions, as as Asanga was pointing out, they're raising geopolitical issues for the first time. This is what Nitin said.
Yeah, definitely.
Sometime in early January this year, the trade unions hardened their position, and I think then the Sri Lankan authorities decided that it was too much of a complicated matter to carry through. And last week, sometime, they came up with what they thought was a compromise formula that instead of the East Container Terminal, the Indian entity could be offered up to 85% stake in the West Terminal of the Colombo Port, on the lines of what a Chinese company has been given in the Colombo International Container Terminal, CICT as they call it. The project, similar terms would be offered to the Indian entity. But then India and Indian High Commission in Colombo issued a statement saying all sides must abide by the agreement that has been done, the Memorandum of Understanding, which meant India would get a stake in East Container Terminal. Now, that is where the matter stands. There is a standoff in a way, and we don't know how it will be resolved, but that is where it stands at the moment.
I just come to you, Asanga. I just want to take some of our viewer comments as well. And you can support our kind of journalism and analysis by just going onto our website, StratNews Global. And we want to thank Srinivas K, who's put up a super sticker for 60 rupees there. Asanga, about the trade unions and why are they bringing it up? And at the same time, also try and bring up some graphics which explain the East Container Terminal for those of you who don't know that. Asanga, why now? I mean, the trade unions, like you're pointing out, when there was Hanbam Tota, there was no issue about, a country getting put up to a full stake for 99 years. And now when it's even a minority stake, why now?
The 99-year port lease, there was protest even back then. By the trade unions, there was a protest, but the government managed to sign the 99-year lease. Now, this is not even a 99-year lease; this is a tripartite agreement. It's a clear agreement, very transparent, and it is open. It is something that, I mean, it's more than any. You see, there's questions on the legitimacy of the agreement, which is completely false. There is, I think, it's more on geopolitics, but not assessing it right, and especially to the top leadership, flowing in the strategic choices that was made, and why it should be continued. And even Gokhale mentioned in his election manifesto.
While you continue to speak, just hold that thought. I'll just get back to what you're saying, but we're also putting up what you're talking about. That is the 2019 trilateral agreement. Go on, Asanga.
Yeah, so the agreement is very clearly, the trilateral between Sri Lanka, Japan, and India. So it's more transparent. It is a much terms are laid at the table very open. I mean, 99 year, the Chinese, when they did this, there was protest, but they managed to somehow proceed. Gotabaya mentioned in his, the President Gotabaya mentioned in his election manifesto that he will revisit these agreements like the Chinese 99 years, but he did. I mean, there is. There's nothing done on the China agreement up to now. I mean, it's been 1 year. So, but then he mentioned that such things will not be continued in future. That he will not, support that sort of thing. So this is what the trade unions took, and he said, look, this is also a national asset. And why are you giving it to a foreign party? So they're using this as a sort of and also using the geopolitics in the wrong context. And this is quite sad because here what you see is a completely different narrative is being posted against, like if you look at the MCC, is also very heavily politicized by a committee which was appointed, and saying there is a significant security threat and a threat to the sovereignty of the country. There is no connection for a threat to the sovereignty of the nation. So you cannot discount the China factor here. This is something that I have. I mean. A few weeks ago, I did write a piece on this, analyzing this. Yep. And it's really, really important. It's important that you understand this factor. Regionally, I see India. There's three corners of India. There's expansion of. I see a semi-autocratic model, like in Myanmar. I see, I'm very disturbed of what's happening in Myanmar. I mean, Pakistan, we usually, I mean, it is seen the semi or the military model. So they're here in Sri Lanka also. So here, India will be sort of a significant, will be facing a significant threat when a different sort of alternative model. This is a point that I want to clearly mention. Not only in the infrastructure diplomacy. President's brother, Basil Rajapaksa, he mentions after the CCP conference in Colombo, which is with CCP as well as the Rajapaksa political party, saying that the Chinese model is one of the best models, and we should look into that. So here, I think you need to sort of understand and whether the emerging power is promoting an alternative model. In nations like Sri Lanka or the other countries. So one has to be extremely careful. You need to study the geopolitical trends carefully, and the choices has to be, carefully put forward to the leadership, because these are choices, the strategic choices that were made by Sri Lanka, and we need to sort of stick to that. And for example, even on Hambantota, the choices that was made, you cannot revisit again, and that was the choice that was made for 99 years. So even the container terminal, which was given, so why do we want to sort of reset it? And now they're mentioning about a West container terminal, WTC.
Exactly.
So moving to the West. So it's not about the East or the West, West container terminal. So. So
I'll just come to that. Since you're raising the China angle, I want to take some of the comments that have come in from viewers. Nitin Rathi has sent in a comment that the Chinese hand is visible here. We already took the other one on Matara. There's also... I would like to thank Shubham Chaudhary, who's sent in a super sticker for, I think it's Australian dollars, to keep supporting us. And GS says, India is a natural partner and immediate neighbor of Sri Lanka, and we both need to abide by agreements, at the same time respecting each other's geopolitical sensitivities. It can't be a one-way street. Absolutely, it is completely a two-way street. In fact, earlier I asked Nitin Gokhale, who's in Bangalore, editor-in-chief, on how the current tension, if I could call it that, or the strain, would affect India-Sri Lanka ties.
Will it affect India-Sri Lanka ties? Amitabh, that's a moot question. In the short term, yes, because both sides have taken hardened positions, and both have said that they will stick by what they have decided. The Sri Lankan cabinet, in fact, has passed a resolution that the East Container Terminal will remain 100%. Ownership will remain with Sri Lanka or Sri Lankan entities. And India has said that one must abide by what has been agreed upon. So, what is the way forward? What is the solution? I think here it will have to be a political solution, a political discussion. And my belief is that President Gotabaya, who was personally invested in good relations with India right from the day he was elected, he has mentioned that he wants Sri Lanka's relations with India to be the top priority. His officials have repeated it a number of times. And I personally know that he wants to take advantage of India's vast resources, expertise, and of course the geographical proximity to take in Sri Lanka on a developmental path. So I think he will reach out personally to the top leadership in India, and they'll try and find some kind of a solution. May not happen quickly, but my belief is that it's too sensitive a matter to be left to officials or other interlocutors and negotiators. It will have to be resolved at the highest level politically.
Asanga, if Nitin is saying that, and I do, of course, reminding our viewers that Nitin was the first to get worldwide an interview with President Gotabaya after he was elected, and we had played that out. I also want to put out India's High Commission spokesperson's statement that came out earlier when this news actually broke of the cabinet decision of moving the East Container Terminal away from the 2019 agreement. If you can get the Indian spokesperson's reaction in terms of quite a stern statement that was given there. But Asanga, when you're talking about President Gotabaya, is there a division of sorts between the brothers? You talked about Basil as well earlier in terms of policy.
There was a discussion. I mean, I was listening to the trade unions saying that Gotabaya was talking about 51-49%, while Mahinda was always the protector of the terminal, as well as who's been looking after the trade unions from the beginning. And so there is a narrative that is going. I cannot sort of validate where there is a tension between the two, but I don't see that. But here is an opportunity lost for the country, just like the other opportunities. The MCC was also one of them. You see, they are transformed as a threat to the sovereignty, a threat to national security. So they have nothing to do with it. Here is a case. I mean, if you look at 2014 November, when the Chinese submarines came to the Colombo Port, there was a serious issue. So there was China always in the Sri Lankan geopolitics. So I think this factor needs to be clearly understood and has to be sort of looked at. President's, I think the approach on, obviously the one of the first visits to India with Prime Minister Modi, strengthening the relationship. What Jaishankar mentioned in his visit was about the devolution of power, which basically Sri Lanka have been working for a very long time, from 1988. But still, up to now, there's a question with the minority community, the Tamilian community. It's not been addressed. And it's time that, you talk about it. And here is a situation where the government's own minister of provincial council says he doesn't believe in provincial council, which is quite sad. And this has been, I think, even on the Human Rights Watch, as well as the UNHRC, which Sri Lanka is facing on, it actually, it's a bottleneck to get to the genuine reconciliation process. So you cannot say that India, so they blame other countries for our, own strategic choices and mistakes. And especially, India, I mean, being the larger geographical, nation next to Sri Lanka, you cannot blame India for all that. I mean, this is an opportunity lost. And what you see is that you need sort of...
Is there a constituency? Because this was part of the electoral plank. It was part of the promises that were given. How much of a constituency is it internally, domestically? And is there any external pressure? Because I'm just going to take a comment while you think about the answer. Kundan Chaudhary is saying it's clear as daylight that China has gained a huge influence over trade unions and is using it to sabotage India-Sri Lanka's relations. What they cannot do themselves, they make their goons do. Anyway, how much of an external influence is there, is my point.
Yeah. So there is a significant external influence. This is what I've been saying. I mean, my new book, which is The Conundrum of an Island, speaks exactly on that question. I mean, this is an answer to that. The conundrum of the island is the external pressure that Sri Lanka is going through. It is not taking in
external pressure. We're talking about Chinese pressure, right? It's not, as you said, the Western liberal model.
Yeah, so I mean, I analyzed 3 spheres of influence. Sri Lanka being in the strategic, geostrategic location in the Indian Ocean. I see triangular power projections going on from India, the United States, and China. And Indian Ocean, how important is to India, and India being the net security provider of the entire region, as well as what India is struggling. Sri Lanka being a democratic nation with its liberal values needs to sort of secure that. And here is a problem. An alternative model has been discussed with the infrastructure projects. And this is the danger that I see. It's not about the volume. I mean, a lot of people say that, okay, the debt trap, it's about the volume. Let's talk about the volume, that the Chinese volume is much less than the commercial borrowings. No, that's not the argument. That it is the Chinese, there is opaqueness in the loans.
No transparency. Nobody knows what the terms and conditions are till it's too late.
So here is the time that they should improve the processes. I know that China is part of the multilateral, they're talking about multilateralism more, should assist multilateralism to flourish in this part of the region also. So, but the danger is that, when it comes to situations like this, I mean, this is a tripartite agreement. It is an agreement. Usually, I mean, there is no problem at all. But all these trends, a weekend paper, the Sunday Times highlighted clearly. There is a significant trend, which is like
like you said, you're finding it worrying. I also asked Nitin Gokhale earlier about the China factor in Sri Lanka and how relations could progress going down the road.
Well, China is always an unspoken presence in this region, as you know, and particularly in Sri Lanka since 2010, 2011, almost for a decade. The contest between Indian influence and increasing Chinese influence has been fierce. It's been up and down battle. Sometimes China has had the upper hand. Sometimes India has taken control of the narrative, as well as taken control of the relationship with Sri Lanka, and has brought Sri Lanka on board on quite a few issues. But one cannot wish away Chinese presence. Whether there is a Chinese hand in this particular spat or this particular standoff, it's difficult to say. But there is no doubt that China has got favorable terms in the past in Sri Lanka, especially in the Hambantota port. But that also became a reason for downfall of one government in Sri Lanka in the past decade, remember. And therefore, Sri Lanka being an island, ports are sensitive, ports are important source of livelihood, so a source of income for a small country like Sri Lanka, apart from tourism. Therefore, I'm saying that no matter what China does or wants, India will be a big player and be a big influence in Sri Lanka, which even the Sri Lankans want. They do not want to be completely under the Chinese dominance, and therefore this contest will go on. But we'll have to see how this is resolved going forward.
Asanga, when we're talking about this contest and we look at countries in the region, in the neighborhood, not in our extended neighborhood as well, you see how Thailand tries to balance. We've seen Sri Lanka in the past, we've seen Maldives as well. It is absolutely understandable when a country looks at its foreign interests, and if there are two big powers who are willing to give them whatever they want, to, if I can use the phrase, play them against each other. But what's the fear here, as you were pointing out, is that the Chinese model of doing business is so opaque, it's so non-transparent, it seems that it's only catering to entrapping the host country into giving them something strategically down the line.
No, it's about hedging. I mean, we've been hedging our foreign policy, not being clear. So basically, two contradictory policies are executing at the same time. Being part of the BRI, being part of the Indo-Pacific. But if you're part of the Indo-Pacific, you need to be with the norms of the Indo-Pacific, which is the rules-based order. You need to talk about the law of the sea. You need to talk about the norms, the democratic the values that cherish. So it's been part of both. But Sri Lanka has been hedging, but then stuck in this binary, a kind of false binary psychology, which is either China or the US. But not investing in the middle power. So my assessment is that Sri Lanka should work more with the middle powers, and have a more sort of a clear-cut, broad-based, realist foreign policy right now, because what it's having is, Gokhale has mentioned that it will balance, but the question is that how the powers would it allow us to sort of balance? In this situation, sure, it's very clear. The four agreements which was frozen or been terminated right now, you're not balancing here. And you see serious, I think, a very poor assessment of the geopolitical context. And we're bandwagoning with one particular direction, and this is where the fear is. You see that, okay, here we could, you bandwagon obviously with the stronger powers, seeing that this is the future. But no, I think Sri Lanka would have to revisit is the foundational factors, its democratic values. It's important, and India, being one of the closest partners, can assist Sri Lanka in many ways. So to do that, especially
as Nitin was trying to point out earlier, is on this particular issue, which is the East Container Terminal and the West Container Terminal, he's feeling that at the highest level, this will be sorted out. Like you pointed out, there were protests even during Hambantota, but the government pushed it through. Do you think this is just a strong murmur of protest now that the government will somehow overcome when it comes to the ECT?
Oh, so the protest is over. The work has been done. The cabinet has made the decision. So the West Container Terminal is now given for a PPP. Any partner could come for a PPP at the WTC, the West Terminal. The East Container Terminal is taken by the Ports Authority. Thinking that it's a strategic asset, that it should be with the Ports Authority. So that's the decision. And so that's why I said.
While you continue speaking, just go on. I'll just try and bring up the graphics again, which is explaining the whole, both the 2019 trilateral agreement and the East Container Terminal. Sorry for interrupting you there. The graphic explaining the two.
Yeah, so even at the CICT, the Chinese controlled port, the largest, the transshipments are from India. So you have the largest transshipment coming in from India. So India is a key player here in the region, and Sri Lanka needs to work with it. So some of the infrastructure projects, that's why I mentioned Hambantota being the large infrastructure projects, the returns from the Hambantota was the question. So I think here is a model that this is projected as a national security threat or as seen as a
Right.
threat to the sovereignty.
And the
Yeah.
effect. I mean, nobody's trying to predict what New Delhi will do. But if this agreement, which is a multilateral agreement, trilateral agreement, is reneged on, why should India take up the West container terminal? I mean, can India, as there have been talks about or proposals, have a completely different transshipment port, say, in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands?
Yes, absolutely correct. So, I mean, here, that's the thing. I mean, here, it's an unfortunate thing and a lost opportunity for both nations. There are many projects that India and Sri Lanka could do, but unfortunately, they're referred, on various India, the perception is quite weak right now. I mean, with all these projects saying that they're coming in, threatening the sovereignty. Now, when it comes to the UNHRC, Sri Lanka expects India to support, and then what has Sri Lanka done for the devolution, which Jayashankar's question is absolutely correct. And there is subsequent governments who has promised, okay, we will give you 13 plus, we will talk about more devolution. But where is it? Where is so the question is, some of the reports we have done, we have not implemented. And the lessons learned LLRC report, or the 2015, the co-sponsored resolution. So, and I think it's here is quite unfair also, because you need to deliver, as well as you need to look at your strategic, choices you made, and you need to defend that in the subsequent governments. It is not from government with the previous government signed something and this government terminated something. Remember that 2015, when the new government came, the Chinese projects were all held up for some time, and saying that because the new government who came in 2015, that they said that they will investigate all these projects and all that. After about a year, that same government, said that the BRI is the best thing that happened to the country, and they started the projects back again. So you'd have to sort of, the dimensions here have to be clearly understood. And trade unions usually doesn't speak about geopolitics.
You started off saying that trade unions involved in geopolitics, and I think it's a good note to end here this discussion. Asanga Abeyagoonasekera, thank you so much for giving us your insights and your time from Colombo. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And also a big shout out to all those who have been watching and commenting. Some of you have also supported us. You can continue to do that for our strategic analysis on our website, StratNews Global, where you can financially contribute to us making programs and shows like this. You can also follow us on our social media handles on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. This is StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh P.